I still remember the sound of the sirens that night, high-pitched, desperate, echoing through our quiet suburban street. The kind of sound that makes your chest tighten before you even know why. The flashing red lights danced across my living room walls, painting everything in shades of chaos and guilt. Through the window, I could see them, firefighters rushing, neighbors whispering, and my husband's car parked crookedly on the driveway. And in that instant, I knew. I knew what had happened. I knew what I'd done. My knees gave out, and I slid down the cold wall, clutching my chest as if I could keep my heart from breaking apart all over again. My hands trembled so badly that I could barely breathe. I wanted to scream. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to disappear. But instead, I whispered the same question over and over to myself. What have I done? That's where it all began to end. But the truth started long before that night. Before the sirens, before the glue, before everything collapsed, there was love. Real, pure love, or at least what I thought love was. I met Ryan when I was 19. He was tall, charming, with the kind of smile that made you forget how to think. He wasn't the smartest man in the room, but he always knew how to make people laugh. And God, I loved that. I loved being with someone who made the world feel lighter. We were young, reckless, and stupid in love. We got married in a small ceremony under an oak tree in my mother's backyard. He promised me forever. I promised him everything I had. The first few years were perfect, or close enough. He'd hold me every night, whispering dreams about the future, the house we'd buy, the kids we'd raise, the vacations we couldn't afford but always talked about anyway. I believed him. Every word. Because when you love someone, you don't see the cracks until you're already bleeding from them. It started changing after our 8th anniversary. Slowly, so slowly, I almost didn't notice it at first. He began staying late at work, deadlines, he'd say, while avoiding my eyes. He stopped kissing me goodbye in the mornings. He stopped asking how my day was. At first, I blamed myself. I thought maybe I wasn't trying hard enough. Maybe I'd gotten too comfortable, too predictable. I started wearing the perfume he once said he loved. I cooked his favorite meals. I even lost weight not for me, but for him. But no matter what I did, he stayed distant. The laughter disappeared, the warmth faded. Our bed felt like a graveyard of memories, full of love that used to be alive but wasn't anymore. One night he came home past midnight. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair messy, his phone buzzing with messages he quickly silenced. I asked him where he'd been. He smiled that fake smile, the one that didn't reach his eyes. Just drinks with the guys, he said. But the smell of her perfume lingered in the air, floral, expensive, unfamiliar. Something inside me cracked. Who is she? I asked quietly. He froze for a second, then laughed not kindly but mockingly. You're being paranoid again, Emma. You really need to stop reading those stupid articles about cheating. You're embarrassing yourself. Embarrassing myself. That's what he said. I felt my cheeks burn, not from guilt but from humiliation. The way he said it, like I was some crazy woman inventing stories, and for a while I believed him. That's the worst part about being gaslit. You start doubting your own mind. For weeks after that, I tried to act normal. I smiled through dinners, asked about his day, even laughed at his jokes. But every time he looked at his phone and smirked, my stomach twisted. I couldn't ignore the signs anymore. One evening, when he was in the shower, I picked up his phone. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely unlock it. I hated myself for doing it, but something deeper, something desperate, pushed me to look. And there it was. A message from a woman named Clara Redheart. The heart next to her name sliced through me like a knife. Last night was amazing. You always know how to make me feel wanted. Miss your hands already. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it was collapsing. I scrolled and scrolled, photos, texts, plans to meet again. It wasn't just a fling. It was an affair, a life behind my back. When he walked out of the bathroom, towel around his waist, humming like nothing was wrong, I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized I didn't recognize the man standing in front of me anymore. I wanted to scream, throw the phone at him, break everything in sight, but I didn't. Instead, I handed him the phone and whispered, "Who is she?" He froze, his face drained of color. Then, as if flipping a switch, he smirked. "You shouldn't go through my stuff," he said coldly. "That's not healthy." I laughed, a hollow, broken sound I didn't even recognize. "Healthy?" I said. "You've been sleeping with someone else and you're lecturing me about boundaries." He didn't apologize, he didn't beg. He just walked past me muttering, "You always overreact." That night, I cried until I couldn't anymore. I buried my face in the pillow, biting it to muffle the sobs so the neighbors wouldn't hear. The days that followed felt unreal. I moved through life like a ghost. I went to work, smiled at my coworkers, came home to silence. Every night, he'd come in later, sometimes not at all. We barely spoke. When we did, it was only about bills or groceries. The love was gone. What remained was resentment, thick, suffocating, poisonous. One morning, I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee, staring at the wedding photo on the wall. We looked so happy then. My younger self looked back at me with hope in her eyes. If I could talk to her, I'd tell her, "Don't believe in forever. People change. Love fades. And sometimes, the person you die for is the one who kills you from the inside." Then came the night that changed everything. He said he was going on a business trip. I didn't even bother to argue anymore. I just nodded, watching him pack his bag, pretending to believe his lies. But something inside me snapped that night. Not in rage, in sorrow. It was like I'd reached the end of a long, painful movie, and I couldn't bear to watch the ending anymore. I sat alone in the dark, staring at the empty side of the bed. His side, the sheets still smelled like him. And that's when the thought entered my mind, cruel, absurd, and yet strangely satisfying. It started as a whisper. What if he couldn't lie his way out this time? I laughed at the idea, brushed it off. But the more I thought about everything he took from me, the trust, the peace, the years, the louder that whisper became. I didn't plan revenge out of anger. I planned it out of heartbreak. Because heartbreak has a way of twisting your sense of right and wrong until you can't tell which side you're on anymore. The next morning, I smiled for the first time in months. Not because I was happy, but because I'd finally stopped crying. He kissed my cheek before leaving, like he always did before his trips. I didn't flinch this time. I waited until his car disappeared down the street before whispering to myself, "Let's see how it feels to be the one embarrassed for once." I didn't know then how far it would go. I didn't know how irreversible it would be. I only knew that something inside me had broken so completely that all I could feel was the hollow echo of betrayal. Now, every time I close my eyes, I can still hear the sirens. I can still see the flashing lights. I can still smell the faint trace of smoke from that night. They said the firefighters had never seen anything like it. That's how my story ends in the headlines, "Wife's revenge gone wrong." But what they don't tell you is how it feels to watch the man you once loved scream in pain. How it feels to realize that your revenge has crossed a line you can never step back from. Sometimes, when I can't sleep, I replay that night over and over, not the chaos, but the silence right before it. The moment I could have stopped myself. The moment I could have chosen forgiveness instead of destruction. But I didn't. And that's why I'm here, alone, haunted, and forever branded by my own choices. Because love doesn't just die quietly. Sometimes, it burns everything down with it. It's strange how silence can become a weapon. After that night, Ryan and I barely spoke. We lived under the same roof but existed in two different worlds, like strangers who happened to share an address. The house felt colder, emptier, even though it looked the same. Every morning, I'd watch him get ready for work, hair neatly combed, shirt pressed, tie perfectly knotted, and I'd wonder how someone could look so composed after destroying everything we had. I wanted to scream at him, shake him, make him feel the chaos inside me, but I didn't. Instead, I brewed his coffee, black, 2 sugars, just the way he liked it. He'd take it without a word, without even looking at me. And that silence hurt more than any insult could. Because silence means you don't matter anymore. The house had once been full of laughter. He used to sing terribly in the shower, tease me about how long I spent doing my hair, leave sticky notes on the fridge that said things like, "Love you more than pancakes." Now there were no notes, no songs, no laughter. Just the sound of the clock ticking, reminding me that I was wasting more of my life every second I stayed. I'd sit by the window some nights, staring out at the streetlights, imagining him in another woman's bed, whispering the same lies he once told me. I tried to tell myself I didn't care anymore. But the truth, I did, too much. I wasn't angry because he cheated. I was angry because I still loved him. One afternoon, I went to do the laundry. His shirt pocket had a folded receipt from a hotel, a place on the other side of town, 2 glasses of wine, a single room. He didn't even bother to hide it this time. My hands shook as I held the paper, staring at the name of the hotel like it was a confession written in ink. That night when he came home, I placed the receipt on the dining table. He glanced at it, sighed, and poured himself a drink. "Ryan," I said quietly. No response. "Who is she?" He took a sip, staring at the glass as if the whiskey inside was far more interesting than my question. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, too calm. "It doesn't matter." I felt something in me break. "It doesn't matter," I repeated, my voice cracking. He shrugged. "Things haven't been right between us for a long time, Emma. Maybe it's time you accepted that." Accepted it. Like our marriage was an expired contract, instead of a life we'd built together. "You could have just left," I whispered. "You didn't have to destroy me first." He looked at me then, his expression softening for just a moment, a flicker of guilt, maybe, or pity. I couldn't tell which. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said. "It just happened." I wanted to laugh. People don't accidentally fall into someone else's arms, undress, and betray 10 years of promises. But I didn't have the energy to fight anymore. I walked past him, tears burning my eyes, and locked myself in the bathroom. I sat on the floor, hugging my knees, listening to the faint sound of him turning on the TV like nothing had happened. The next few weeks blurred together. I went to work, came home, cooked dinner, cleaned, repeated. It was like being trapped in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. He stopped trying to hide the affair. He'd take calls in front of me now, whispering just enough that I couldn't hear the words, but enough that I knew who was on the other end. Sometimes he'd leave on weekends and say, "Don't wait up." He didn't even bother lying anymore. That hurt most of all, the realization that I wasn't even worth the effort of deceit. I started sleeping on the couch, not that he cared. My mother came to visit one day. She took one look at me and frowned. "You look tired," she said gently, brushing my hair from my face. "I'm fine," I lied. She didn't believe me. Mothers never do. She sat beside me on the couch, taking my hand. "Emma, I know that look. I had it once too." Her words hit me like a quiet punch. I remembered my father, his affairs, his absences, the way my mother pretended everything was fine for years before finally packing her bags. "You left him," I said softly. She nodded, because staying was killing me. I stared at the floor, my voice barely above a whisper. But what if leaving doesn't make it better? What if I'm just alone? She squeezed my hand. "Sweetheart, being alone isn't the worst thing. Being with someone who makes you feel invisible is." Tears filled my eyes, but I didn't cry. I'd already done enough of that. That night, I sat outside on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the stars. I thought about how everything felt so heavy now, even breathing. I tried to remember the last time Ryan and I had been truly happy, but the memories felt like old photographs left out in the rain, blurry and faded. I wanted to hate him, but I couldn't. I still loved the version of him that used to exist. The one who'd dance with me in the kitchen at midnight, barefoot and drunk on cheap wine. The one who'd whisper, "You're my forever." But that man was gone. And the one who replaced him, I didn't know him anymore. Then one night, something shifted. He came home late again, but this time I caught the smell of perfume clinging to his collar, stronger, floral, expensive. The same one from before. He walked in, whistling, tossing his jacket on the couch. "Long day?" I asked, forcing calm into my voice. "Yeah," he said, loosening his tie. "You wouldn't believe the amount of paperwork I had to deal with." "Paperwork?" I smiled, even though my hands were trembling. Must have been exhausting. He nodded absently, scrolling through his phone. I could see her name flash across the screen, Clara read. I wanted to smash the phone, throw it out the window, scream. But I didn't. Instead, I said softly, "You should shower. You smell different." He glanced up, eyes narrowing. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, I said with a shrug. Just an observation. He glared at me for a second longer before walking off. I sat there, staring at his glass of whiskey on the table. The ice was melting slowly, one cube at a time, just like us. The next morning, I went through his drawer to put away laundry. That's when I saw it, the little bottle of lubricant he always took with him when he traveled. I'd seen it before, ignored it, but this time, something about it made me stop. I picked it up, staring at it for a long moment. Then, out of nowhere, a dark thought crossed my mind. It wasn't even serious at first, just a fleeting, bitter fantasy. What if he got caught in the act somehow? What if karma finally showed up? I shook my head, laughed at myself. I wasn't that kind of person. Or maybe I was becoming her. Because when pain turns into humiliation, and humiliation turns into rage, you start to forget where the line is. Days passed, and I kept finding new clues of his betrayal. A lipstick-stained napkin in his car. A second toothbrush hidden in his travel bag. Even a voicemail from her, her voice soft and teasing, saying, "I can't wait for this weekend." That one nearly destroyed me. I deleted it before he could notice, but her voice echoed in my head for days. I couldn't sleep. I stopped eating. I spent hours sitting on the bathroom floor, just staring at the tiles. It felt like the walls were closing in, like the air itself was suffocating me. And yet, every time I thought about confronting him again, I'd remember that look on his face, cold, dismissive, detached, and I'd stop. Because I already knew how it would go. He'd deny, deflect, make me feel crazy. So instead of fighting him, I started fighting myself. I thought about leaving. I even packed a bag once. But when I looked around the house, our house, I froze. Every corner, every wall, every photo had pieces of me in it, pieces I couldn't just abandon. Besides, I wasn't ready to walk away without him feeling even a fraction of the pain he'd given me. One night, as I sat alone, I found myself staring at that little bottle again. My reflection in the mirror looked hollow, my eyes red and tired. I whispered to it, "You ruined me. Now I'll ruin you." It scared me, the calmness in my voice, the cold certainty in my chest. But there was no turning back anymore. The next morning, I smiled as he kissed my cheek goodbye, the same routine we'd done 1,000 times before. Except this time, my heart wasn't breaking. It was hardening. I watched him walk to his car, his phone already buzzing. I knew who it was. I didn't even need to look. When the door closed behind him, I exhaled slowly and whispered, "You'll remember me after tonight." And for the first time in months, I felt something other than sadness. It wasn't peace, it wasn't happiness. It was power, dark, dangerous, intoxicating power. The kind that only comes when love dies and vengeance takes its place. There's a strange calm that comes right before you finally lose control. It's like standing in the eye of a storm, everything around you is chaos, but you're perfectly still, almost peaceful. That's how it felt the night everything inside me cracked for good. Ryan was out again, working late, as always. I sat alone in the living room, the TV flickering in front of me, but I wasn't really watching. The sound was just noise, something to fill the hollow space his absence left behind. On the coffee table sat that little bottle, the one I'd found in his drawer. My eyes kept drifting to it, over and over, as if it were staring back at me. I picked it up, turning it in my hands. It looked so ordinary. Small, harmless. The kind of thing no one would ever look twice at. But in my hands, it felt heavy, like a symbol of everything that had gone wrong. I twisted the cap open. The smell hit me, faint and sterile. I closed it quickly and sat back, my heart pounding. What was I even doing? Then I heard my own voice whisper, low, almost unrecognizable. "He's probably with her right now." That thought burned through me like acid. I could see it so clearly, him in some cheap hotel room, laughing, touching her the way he used to touch me. The image made me sick. I clenched my fists until my nails dug into my palms. Tears blurred my vision. I didn't even notice when one slipped down and landed on the bottle in my hand. I wanted to hurt him. I wanted him to feel something, anything. Because he'd left me drowning in silence, while he went on living like nothing had happened. The plan didn't come to me all at once. It crept in like a shadow, slow and quiet, until it became impossible to ignore. I wasn't thinking clearly anymore. Maybe I wasn't thinking at all. That night, I went into the garage and found a tube of industrial-strength glue, the kind Ryan used for fixing things around the house. I held it, weighing the consequences in my mind. It was supposed to be a prank. A stupid, humiliating prank. I told myself I didn't want to hurt anyone, I just wanted him to stop. To look in the mirror and see what he'd become. Let him feel trapped, I whispered to myself, my voice trembling, the same way he trapped me in this hell. I laughed, not a normal laugh, but one that sounded like it came from someone else. Someone I didn't recognize anymore. For days, I went back and forth in my head. My conscience and my anger battled like enemies at war. Don't do it, Emma. You're better than this. No, he deserves it. After everything he's done, he deserves worse. I barely slept. I stopped eating. Every time Ryan spoke, I had to bite my tongue to stop myself from screaming the truth in his face. Then one night, I heard him on the phone, his voice low, gentle, full of that fake tenderness I hadn't heard in years. "Yeah, baby," he whispered. "Can't wait to see you again." I stood in the hallway, frozen, every word cutting deeper. I wanted to burst in and snatch the phone away, but I just stood there, watching him laugh. He was so happy. That was the moment, the final push. I waited until he fell asleep, then crept into the bathroom. My reflection in the mirror looked hollow, pale skin, dark circles, eyes full of something ugly. I unscrewed the cap of his lube and carefully emptied it into the sink. My hands were shaking so badly that some of it splattered onto the counter. Then, I picked up the glue. My heart raced as I squeezed the thick, clear substance into the bottle, replacing every drop. The smell was sharp, chemical, nauseating. I wiped the outside clean, careful not to leave any trace. When I was done, I stared at it for a long time, breathing hard. My pulse was so loud in my ears it drowned out everything else. "This is it," I whispered. "This is what you pushed me to." I placed the bottle back exactly where I found it. Then I walked out, turned off the light, and closed the door. My legs gave out halfway down the hallway, and I collapsed to the floor, trembling. I didn't cry. I couldn't. It was as if I'd already cried out every drop of emotion I had left. All that remained was emptiness. The next morning, Ryan acted like nothing was wrong. He hummed while shaving, joked about how his boss was driving him insane. He even kissed me on the cheek before leaving, a casual, meaningless gesture that almost made me laugh. "Be good while I'm gone," he said, grabbing his keys. "Always," I replied, smiling faintly. As soon as the door shut behind him, my knees buckled. I slid down the kitchen cabinet and pressed my palms to my face, trying to steady my breathing. My heart was beating so fast it hurt. I kept replaying it in my mind, what I'd done, what could happen. Maybe he'd never even use it. Maybe it'd just sit in his bag, forgot. Maybe this was all just a symbolic act of rebellion, a way of saying, I'm not powerless anymore. That's what I told myself. Over and over. Until I almost believed it. The day crawled by. I couldn't focus on anything. Every sound made me jump, the phone ringing, a car passing outside, even the hum of the refrigerator. Around 10 p.m., I got a text from him. "Won't be home tonight, don't wait up." My stomach twisted. I read it 3 times, my eyes burning. I wanted to reply something cruel, but I didn't. Instead, I put the phone down and walked to the window. Outside, the world looked peaceful. The moonlight spilled across the street, painting everything silver. It was beautiful, cruelly beautiful, considering the storm raging inside me. I stood there for hours, staring into the night, my mind spinning with guilt and satisfaction all tangled together. Somewhere deep down, I knew what was coming. I didn't want to admit it yet, but a part of me, the small, terrified part that still loved him, prayed that nothing would happen. That he'd somehow be spared. I woke up to chaos. It was still dark when the phone started ringing. I ignored it at first, half asleep. Then it rang again, and again. Finally, I answered. It was my neighbor, her voice frantic. "Emma, oh my God, there are fire trucks outside. Did you hear?" My heart dropped. "Fire trucks," I whispered. "Yes, they're at the Jefferson Hotel. It's all over the street, people are saying." She stopped mid-sentence. "Emma, isn't that where your husband said he was staying?" The phone nearly slipped from my hand. My throat tightened. I couldn't breathe. The world tilted, spinning violently, as I stumbled toward the window. And there they were, the flashing lights in the distance, cutting through the fog. I didn't need to ask what happened. I already knew. My body went cold. My knees gave out. I sank to the floor, my mind screaming no, no, no over and over again. Hours later, the story spread everywhere. The hotel staff had called 911 after hearing screams from one of the rooms. When the firefighters arrived, they found Ryan and his mistress, stuck together, naked, crying, covered in pain and humiliation. It was the kind of story people laugh about online, the kind that goes viral. But for me, it was a nightmare come to life. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I just sat there, staring at the wall, feeling like I was trapped in someone else's body. I wanted to call him. I wanted to explain, to apologize, to scream that I hadn't meant for it to go that far. But how could I? What could I possibly say that would make sense? There were police reports, hospital visits, and whispers from neighbors who suddenly looked at me differently. I became that woman, the one who snapped, the one who took revenge too far. That night, when he finally came home, bandaged, broken, furious, I stood frozen by the kitchen counter. He didn't speak at first. He just stared at me, his eyes burning with hatred. "What did you do to me?" he whispered, his voice shaking. I opened my mouth to answer, but no sound came out. He slammed his hand on the table. "What the hell did you do, Emma?" Tears welled up in my eyes. I didn't mean to, I just wanted. "To what?" he snapped. "Humiliate me, destroy my life." I flinched. The rage in his voice was something I'd never heard before. "You ruined me," he said, his voice low, trembling with disgust. "You think this is revenge? You think this makes us even?" I couldn't look at him, my vision blurred. My chest felt like it was collapsing in on itself. "I just wanted you to stop hurting me," I whispered. He laughed bitterly. "Congratulations, you've done that, you've hurt everyone." He walked past me, slamming the door behind him. The sound echoed through the house like a gunshot. And then silence. That was the night I realized revenge doesn't heal you. It just gives your pain a new place to live. I sat on the floor until sunrise, my hands shaking, the weight of everything crushing me. I thought I'd feel better once he suffered. I thought maybe then I'd finally have peace. But all I felt was emptiness, a vast, endless emptiness that swallowed everything good left inside me. Because love doesn't disappear when you're betrayed. It rots. It turns into something dark and poisonous. And that poison, it doesn't just kill them. It kills you too. I don't remember sleeping after that night. I just sat there on the cold kitchen floor, the world spinning around me, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. The sound of his screams still echoed in my head, even though I hadn't been there to hear them in person. I didn't need to. My mind replayed them for me anyway, over and over, until I thought I'd go insane. When morning came, I didn't move. The sunlight crept through the curtains like an uninvited guest, painting golden streaks across a life that no longer felt like mine. My phone was still buzzing, missed calls, text messages, news alerts. Scandal at local hotel. Unusual medical emergency shocks firefighters. Every headline was a reminder of what I'd done. I picked up the phone with trembling hands and opened one of the articles. My eyes darted across the screen, reading words that didn't feel real. A man and woman were taken to the hospital after a bizarre incident at the Jefferson Hotel. Authorities say the two individuals were physically bonded together due to an unknown adhesive substance. Police suspect foul play. My name wasn't mentioned, not yet, but it was only a matter of time. I dropped the phone. It hit the tile floor with a sharp crack, echoing through the house like a gunshot. That was when I realized I had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Around noon, someone knocked on the door. I froze. For a moment, I thought it might be the police. But when I opened it, it was Sarah, my next-door neighbor. She looked pale, her eyes wide with gossip and pity. "Emma," she began softly, "did you hear about Ryan?" I nodded, my voice came out barely above a whisper. "Yes." She hesitated, glancing past me into the house, like she wanted to see what guilt looked like. "They said it was awful. The firefighters had to." "Please don't," I cut her off, my throat tightening. "I don't want to know." Her lips pressed together, but her curiosity won. "People are saying it was some kind of prank gone wrong. The police think someone tampered with. I said stop, I snapped, louder than I meant to. She flinched. For a second, her face softened with something that might have been concern. Then she nodded slowly and stepped back. If you need anything, I'm next door. I closed the door before she could finish. I leaned against it, breathing heavily, my body trembling from the inside out. My skin felt too tight, like I was trapped in someone else's body, someone I didn't recognize. That night, I sat in the dark, waiting for him. I didn't know if he'd come home. I wasn't sure I wanted him to. Hours passed. Midnight came and went. I must have dozed off on the couch because the sound of the door creaking open jolted me awake. It was him. Ryan stood in the doorway, a shadow of the man he used to be. His face was pale, his eyes hollow. There were bandages around his thighs, and he moved slowly, like every step hurt. We stared at each other for a long time, two ghosts trapped in the same house. He spoke first, his voice was low, hoarse. You think this is funny? I swallowed hard. Ryan. Don't, he snapped, his voice sharp as glass. Don't say my name like that. He limped closer, each step heavy. Do you know what you did to me, to us? Tears burned my eyes. I didn't mean. Bullshit, he yelled. His voice cracked, and for a moment I saw the pain in his eyes, not just physical but deeper, Rower. You knew what you were doing. You wanted to destroy me. I shook my head, crying now. No, I wanted you to feel what I felt, the humiliation, the pain. You made me hate myself, Ryan. He laughed bitterly. So you decided to make the whole damn world laugh at me instead. I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. He ran his hands through his hair, packing. You should have just left. You could have walked away, started over, done anything, but you had to ruin me. I already was ruined, I whispered, long before this. That stopped him. He turned to look at me, his eyes glistening with fury and something else, something that almost looked like regret. For a second, neither of us spoke. The air between us was thick with everything we'd never said. Then he shook his head slowly. You're sick, he said softly. You need help. He turned and walked toward the bedroom, slamming the door behind him. I stood there for a long time, staring at the closed door. He was right, I did need help, but I didn't know where to start. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, twisted in anger, in pain, in disbelief. I'd imagined revenge would bring relief. But it didn't. It just brought silence. A heavy, endless silence that filled every corner of the house. The next few days were chaos. The story spread everywhere online, on the news, even in whispered conversations at the grocery store. Everyone knew, everyone laughed. Did you hear about that guy at the Jefferson Hotel? God, can you imagine? I bet his wife lost it. And I'd stand there, pretending not to hear, gripping the shopping cart so tightly my knuckles turned white. I started avoiding people altogether. I quit my job, stopped answering calls. My friends tried to reach out at first, but I pushed them away. How could I explain what I'd done when I didn't even understand it myself? Every time I caught my reflection, I saw a stranger, someone with hollow eyes and guilt etched into her face. A week later, I found Ryan sitting in the living room when I came downstairs. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept in days. There was an ice pack on his leg, and he wouldn't look at me. I'm filing for divorce, he said flatly. I froze. I figured, I murmured. He nodded, eyes fixed on the floor. The lawyer will reach out to you. I don't want to talk about this anymore. I didn't want it to end like this, I said softly. He finally looked up. You should have thought of that before you turned me into a fucking headline. Tears filled my eyes, but I didn't argue. I just nodded. He stood, grabbing his crutches, and started toward the door. Then he stopped and turned back. For what it's worth, he said, his voice breaking slightly, I did love you once. And then he left. Just like that. The sound of the door closing behind him was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. After he was gone, the house felt like a tomb. Every room carried an echo of our life together. His cologne, his laughter, the ghost of our love. I tried to move on, but how do you rebuild after you've burned everything to the ground yourself? Nights were the worst. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything, every fight, every lie, every decision that led to that night. Sometimes I'd dream of the firefighters breaking into that hotel room. I'd see the looks on their faces, shock, disgust, pity. I'd hear Ryan screaming, see him reaching out for help, and I'd wake up shaking. And every time, I'd whisper into the darkness, "I'm sorry." But no one was there to hear it. One evening, Sarah knocked again. I almost didn't answer, but something in me was too tired to keep hiding. She stepped inside carefully, like she was entering sacred ground. "You look thinner," she said softly. "I'm fine," I lied. She sat across from me at the kitchen table. "Emma, I know what everyone's saying, but I don't think you're a monster. I think you're just broken." Her words made my throat tighten. I blinked back tears. I didn't mean for it to go that far. "I know." She reached across the table and took my hand. "But pain makes people do strange things. The trick is not to let it define you." I looked down at our hands, her steady, mine trembling. For the first time in weeks, someone's touch didn't feel like judgment. When she left, I cried. Not out of guilt or shame, but because someone finally saw me, not as a headline, not as a villain, but as a human being who simply fell apart. The divorce papers came a month later. I signed them without reading. He didn't show up in person. I didn't expect him to. I mailed them back, then sat on the porch watching the sunset, the same porch where we used to drink coffee and dream about the future. It was beautiful in a cruel kind of way. The sky burned orange and pink like it was on fire. I thought about how love starts that way, warm, bright, breathtaking, and how it always ends the same, in ashes. That night, I opened an old photo album, our wedding pictures, our first apartment, vacations we couldn't afford but took anyway. I touched one of the photos, me in a white dress, him smiling beside me. We looked so happy, so sure. I whispered to that picture, we could have had forever. And then, with shaking hands, I closed the album and put it away. Because forever was gone. And I was the one who killed it. The news didn't die down for weeks. It spread like wildfire across gossip sites, social media, even local radio shows. Everyone had a version of the story. Some exaggerated, others twisted the truth entirely. But the core of it was the same: a husband caught in a humiliating, painful, intimate disaster that turned into a public spectacle. And behind it all, me. Of course, no one said my name outright, not at first. But small towns have sharp tongues and quick memories. People connect the dots faster than you think. By the end of the month, everyone knew. I became her. The crazy wife, the psycho, the woman who went too far. The whispers followed me everywhere. At the grocery store, I could feel their eyes on my back, their fake sympathy dripping from forced smiles. "Oh, Emma, how are you holding up? Must have been difficult. Poor thing, such a shame what happened." But underneath, the politeness was curiosity, the sick kind that feeds on other people's misery. And when I'd leave, I knew what they said. She snapped. I always thought there was something off about her. Well, what did he expect? She looked the type. It was easier to make me the villain than to face the truth that love can rot that way, quietly, invisibly, until one day it explodes. I stopped going out after that. Days blurred together. I barely ate. I slept in small, broken pieces, waking up drenched in sweat from dreams I couldn't escape. In one of them, I was standing in that hotel room, Ryan on the floor, screaming, the firefighters banging on the door. I'd try to move toward him to help, but the floor would turn to glue beneath my feet, trapping me in place. Every time I woke, my heart felt like it was bleeding. I'd walk around the empty house, tracing my fingers over the furniture we'd picked together. The couch where we'd once made love. The kitchen table where we used to argue about bills and laugh over pancakes. Everything reminded me of him. But it wasn't love anymore, it was poison. Every memory was tainted, dripping with regret and shame. A few weeks after the divorce papers were finalized, I ran into him at the pharmacy. It was almost surreal, like seeing a ghost you never expected to face again. He was standing at the counter, waiting for his prescription. His limp was less noticeable now, but he still moved carefully. His face looked older somehow, thinner, harder. He saw me before I could turn away. Our eyes met. For a moment, everything around us faded: the noise, the people, the world, just silence. Then he sighed and looked back at the pharmacist. "Come on, Emma," he said softly, without turning his head. You can stop pretending you don't see me. My throat tightened. I took a hesitant step forward. I didn't expect. Yeah, he interrupted, his voice calm but sharp. Neither did I. There was no anger this time. No shouting, just exhaustion, the kind that seeps into your bones. He turned, looking at me fully now. His eyes were tired, sad. You look worse than I do, he said quietly. I tried to smile, but it came out broken. I probably am. A pause, then he said, You got what you wanted, you hurt me, you won. Tears stung my eyes. I didn't win anything, Ryan, I lost everything. For the first time, I saw his expression soften barely, but it was there. I'm not sure what to say to that, he murmured. Then don't say anything, I whispered. Just go. He nodded once, picked up his prescription, and walked out. I stood there, trembling, my hands clenched into fists. The pharmacist looked at me with pity, and I had to leave before I completely broke down in front of strangers. That encounter haunted me for days. I started wondering about him again, where he was staying, how he was coping, whether he hated me or missed me, or both. Then I found out he'd lost his job. His company wanted nothing to do with the scandal. Even though the tabloids blurred his name, it wasn't enough. People talk. He was now the man from that story. A part of me, the cruel, broken part, thought it was fair. Another part, the woman who still loved him despite everything, wanted to drive to wherever he was, hold his hand, and apologize until there were no words left. But I couldn't, because forgiveness wasn't something he'd ever give me. And I didn't deserve it anyway. One evening, I was sitting by the window, the rain tapping softly against the glass. I had a glass of wine in my hand, my third one, maybe fourth, when my mother called. She didn't start with small talk, she never did. Emma, she said gently, I saw the news. I didn't answer. I don't care what they say about you, she continued. You're still my daughter. Her voice cracked slightly, and that made me cry harder than anything else had in weeks. I made a mistake, Mom, I said between sobs. A terrible one. I didn't mean for it to go that far, I just wanted him to hurt the way I did. I know, she said softly. I know you were hurting, but pain doesn't justify destruction, sweetheart, it never does. I ruined him, I whispered. No, she said after a pause. You ruined yourself, and now you have to find a way to live with that. Her words weren't cruel, they were true, and that truth cut deeper than any insult. After that call, I started going to therapy. The first session, I could barely speak. The therapist, a quiet woman with kind eyes, just waited patiently until I could form words. When I finally did, everything came out at once: the betrayal, the loneliness, the anger, the guilt. She didn't judge me, she didn't flinch. She just said, You were in pain and you lost control of it. Now we'll learn to control it together. I wanted to believe her, I still do. But healing isn't a straight line. It's a circle. You keep returning to the same wounds over and over until maybe one day they stop bleeding. A few months passed, I sold the house. There were too many ghosts in those walls. I moved into a small apartment on the other side of town, quiet, anonymous. No one there knew my story. No one looked at me like I was crazy. I could walk to the grocery store without whispers following me. It wasn't peace, but it was something close. Some nights I'd sit on the balcony with a cup of tea, staring at the lights of the city below. I'd think about the woman I used to be, hopeful, loving, naive, and wonder where she went. She died somewhere between heartbreak and revenge. And what was left was me. One night, I got a message from an unknown number. I forgive you. Just that, no name, but I knew who it was. Ryan. I stared at the screen for a long time, my heart pounding. I didn't reply. I didn't know what to say. Forgiveness, it sounded like freedom, but it also felt like punishment. Because forgiveness meant he was moving on. And I was still here, chained to the past. I set the phone down and whispered into the quiet, I'm sorry. The words disappeared into the night, unanswered. I started writing after that. Not about him, not about what happened, but about feelings, pain, loss, grief, regret. It became my therapy, my confessional. I'd fill notebook after notebook, pouring my heart out, rewriting my story in ink because maybe, somehow, if I could write it differently, I could live it differently too. Sometimes, I'd imagine a version of myself that walked away instead of fighting back. The version who packed her bags and started over before the anger took control. But I'm not her. I'm the woman who stayed. The woman who broke. The woman who took revenge and then realized revenge doesn't save you, it swallows you whole. One afternoon, I went for a walk in the park. There was a couple sitting on a bench nearby, young, laughing, hands intertwined. They reminded me of us before everything fell apart. For a second, I wanted to warn them, to tell them how fragile love really is, how it starts as fire but can turn to ash before you even realize the flames are gone. But I didn't. They deserved their illusion. Everyone does, until reality comes to collect. I just kept walking, the wind cold against my face, the sound of their laughter fading behind me. Later that night, I stood in front of the mirror. I looked older, thinner, but there was something else there too, something softer, maybe acceptance. I'm not the victim, I whispered to my reflection, and I'm not the villain either. I didn't justify what I'd done, I didn't excuse it, but for the first time, I stopped hating myself completely. Because hate is just another kind of glue, it keeps you stuck in the past. And I was finally ready to let go. It's strange how life keeps going, even when you don't want it to. The world doesn't stop for your grief. The sun still rises, the mail still arrives, and people still laugh like everything's fine. I remember waking up one morning months after the divorce, sunlight spilling through the curtains, and for a second, just a second, I forgot everything. I reached across the bed expecting to feel him there. My hand touched cold sheets instead. That's when it hit me all over again. He was gone, not just from the house, but from my life completely. And I'd been the one who lit the match that burned us both to the ground. Therapy helped sometimes. My therapist, Dr. Patel, had this calm voice, steady, gentle, patient. She never rushed me. She'd ask questions that cut right through the fog I built around myself. Do you miss him, or do you miss the idea of who you thought he was? The first time she asked that, I couldn't answer. I just stared at her, tears filling my eyes, because the truth was I missed both. I missed the boy I fell in love with, the one who'd walk me home in the rain and tell me I smelled like peaches. But I also missed the life I thought we'd have, the promise of forever that never existed outside my imagination. Dr. Patel told me guilt is like a second skin. You can't rip it off all at once. You have to peel it piece by piece until you can finally breathe. So that's what I tried to do. Every session, I'd strip away a little more. I'd talk about the lies, the loneliness, the night I snapped. Some days I cried until my voice gave out. Other days, I just sat there in silence, staring at the carpet, wondering how something as beautiful as love could turn into this much pain. One evening after therapy, I passed by a cafe where Ryan and I used to go on weekends. I hadn't been there since before everything fell apart. It looked the same, the old brick walls, the flickering neon sign, the smell of roasted coffee beans drifting out the door. I don't know what made me walk inside. Maybe I wanted to torture myself, maybe I was chasing a ghost. I ordered our usual 2 lattes and a slice of chocolate cake. Old habits die hard. Then I sat by the window, watching strangers walk by. A couple sat at the next table, laughing, their hands brushing. They looked happy. I envied them. I hated that I did, but I couldn't help it. For a moment, I thought about what it would be like to start over, to meet someone new, tell them my story, watch their expression change when they realized who I was. Would anyone ever love me after what I did? Could anyone? That night, I dreamt of Ryan again. We were sitting in our old living room, watching TV like nothing had ever gone wrong. He turned to me and said, "You know, we could have made it if you just trusted me." I tried to speak, but no sound came out. My throat felt sealed shut. He smiled, that same soft smile that used to melt me, and whispered, "You glued us together forever, Emma. Isn't that what you wanted?" I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. My heart felt like it was being crushed in a fist. Even in my dreams, I couldn't escape the consequences. Weeks passed, then months. I got a part-time job at a small bookstore near my apartment. It was quiet, peaceful, just the sound of pages turning and soft piano music playing in the background. No one there knew who I was. To them, I was just Emma, the quiet woman who organized the romance section and made perfect cappuccinos. It was the first time in years that I felt invisible in a good way. Sometimes I'd catch myself smiling. It felt strange, almost guilty, like happiness was something I wasn't allowed anymore. But slowly, the pain dulled. It didn't vanish. I don't think it ever will, but it became bearable, like a scar that still aches when it rains. Then one afternoon, I saw him again. I was leaving the bookstore, locking up for the night, when a familiar voice called my name. Emma. I turned. Ryan stood there, hands in his pockets, looking different. Softer somehow. His hair was longer, his eyes tired but calm. There was no anger in them this time, just something like understanding. I froze, my pulse quickened. "What are you doing here?" I asked quietly. He shrugged. "I was in the neighborhood, thought I'd see if you were okay." I let out a shaky laugh. "You care now." "I always cared," he said. "I just didn't know how to show it, not in the way you needed." The words hung between us, heavy and fragile. He stepped closer. "I'm not here to fight, Emma. I wanted you to know I'm moving to Chicago next week. A fresh start." I nodded. "That's good, you deserve it." He hesitated, then said softly, "So do you." I looked away, blinking back tears. "Maybe someday." He gave a sad smile. "Goodbye, Emma." And just like that, he walked away. No shouting, no bitterness, just quiet acceptance. I stood there until he disappeared down the street, my heart twisting painfully. That was the last time I ever saw him. After he left, I went home and sat on the floor with an old photo album in my lap. I flipped through the pictures, our wedding day, our first apartment, silly selfies from road trips. We looked so happy. I could almost hear our laughter in those photos. For a moment, I let myself cry, not for the man he became, but for the love we lost. Because no matter what he did, and no matter what I did in return, there was a time when it was real. And maybe that was enough. Months passed again. Seasons changed. I started writing a memoir, not to publish, just to release the words that haunted me. I wrote about the loneliness, the betrayal, the guilt. But I also wrote about the small things, the smell of coffee in the mornings, the way he used to trace circles on my palm, the silence after love dies. Writing became my redemption, my confession. One day, Dr. Patel asked me, "If you could go back and change one thing, what would it be?" I thought for a long time before answering. "I wouldn't have tried to hurt him," I said softly. "I would have just left when he gave me every reason to." She smiled gently. "That's growth, Emma. Pain doesn't disappear, but when you can learn from it, it becomes purpose." There were still bad days. Days when I'd wake up and the guilt would crawl back into my chest like a parasite. Days when I'd see couples holding hands and feel that old ache of envy. But there were also good days. Days when the sun felt warm again, when laughter didn't sound foreign, when I caught myself humming while I worked. I started volunteering at a women's shelter, helping others who'd gone through betrayal, abuse, heartbreak. I didn't tell them my full story, but I told them enough to make them feel less alone. One woman, around my age, cried after I listened to her for an hour straight. She hugged me and whispered, "Thank you. I thought I was the only one who'd lost herself for love." And for the first time, I realized maybe my pain could mean something. Maybe it could save someone else from falling as far as I did. Sometimes when I can't sleep, I still think about Ryan. Where he is, whether he's happy, whether he ever thinks about me. And sometimes I imagine another version of us. The one where we talked instead of fought, where we healed instead of hurt. But then I remind myself, that version doesn't exist. It never did. We were two broken people pretending to be whole. And when you build love on top of lies, it's only a matter of time before it collapses. One night I walked down to the beach, the same one we used to visit on anniversaries. The air was cold, the tide soft and steady. I sat on the sand, hugging my knees, watching the waves crash and pull back. There was something soothing about their rhythm, destroy, retreat, return, over and over. That's what healing felt like too. As the sky lightened with dawn, I whispered into the wind, "I forgive you, Ryan, and I forgive myself too." The waves carried my words away. They say time heals all wounds. But that's not true. Some wounds never close, they just stop bleeding. You learn to live with the scar, and maybe, on quiet nights, you even touch it and remember how you got it. I'm not proud of what I did, but I understand it now. Pain doesn't make you evil, it makes you human. And forgiveness, real forgiveness, doesn't erase the past. It just means you've finally stopped letting it own you. It's been 3 years since that night. 3 years since the sirens, the flashing lights, the whispers that followed me everywhere. 3 years since I stopped being Ryan's wife and became a name people mutter with pity and judgment. Time is a strange thing. It doesn't heal, it just reshapes the pain until you learn how to carry it. I've learned how to carry mine. The world has moved on. People found new scandals, new stories to talk about. The internet forgot. But I didn't. You never forget the night, you destroy everything you once loved. I live in a small apartment now, on the top floor of an old building near the coast. The kind of place where you can smell the sea if you open the window at dawn. It's quiet here, peaceful in a lonely kind of way. Every morning, I make coffee and sit by the window, watching people hurry down the street, couples holding hands, parents walking their kids to school, old women feeding birds. Sometimes I wonder if they can see it on my face, the guilt, the history, the ghost of who I used to be. But no one ever looks twice. And maybe that's a blessing. I like the anonymity. It's like starting over without actually erasing the past. I still go to therapy. Dr. Patel says I'm doing better. I smile more now. I eat, I sleep, I even laugh sometimes, real laughter, not the hollow kind that used to echo through my chest like an apology. But she knows there's still a part of me that's stuck in that hotel room, even though I was never there. A part of me that still hears the sirens, sees the flashing lights, and smells the smoke of something burning. Something that used to be love. Sometimes, when I'm brave enough, I visit the old part of town, the one where Ryan and I built our first life together. The house is still there. Different family now. New paint, a swing in the yard, flowers blooming where I once planted rosemary. I stand across the street, hidden behind sunglasses, and watch for a few minutes. There's a woman watering the garden, humming softly. Her husband comes out, kisses her on the cheek, helps her move a heavy pot. They look happy. And for a moment, I let myself believe that maybe that's how we looked once too, before everything cracked, before the lies, before the glue. I don't stay long, I never do. Just long enough to remember that version of us that still exists in some corner of my mind, untouched by betrayal or revenge. I heard Ryan got remarried last year. A mutual friend told me, her tone careful, like she was afraid I'd break. But I didn't. I just nodded and said, I'm glad. And I meant it. Because everyone deserves a chance to start over, even the people who hurt us. Especially them. He sent me a message once, months before his wedding, just one sentence. Thank you for teaching me how dangerous it is to ignore someone's pain. I never replied, there was nothing left to say. That was the closest thing to closure we'd ever get. And it was enough. I sometimes still dream of him. Not the real Ryan, not the man from the affair, not the one who came home with another woman's scent on his shirt. I dream of the boy who held my hand under the oak tree and promised forever. The boy who looked at me like I was the only person in the world. He visits me in dreams, smiling, saying things like, "We were happy once, weren't we?" And I always whisper back, "Yes, we were." When I wake up, my pillow is wet, but my chest doesn't ache the way it used to. It's just quiet. Maybe that's what healing really is, not forgetting, but learning how to remember without breaking. I spend most of my days writing now. The bookshop job turned into something more. My boss, a kind man named Peter, encouraged me to publish some of the essays I'd written about loss and forgiveness. So I did. They didn't mention Ryan, or the glue, or the hotel. But they told the truth about love, pain, and what it means to lose yourself in someone else's story. People wrote letters after reading them. Strangers who said they'd felt invisible, betrayed, or broken. One woman wrote, "Your words stopped me from doing something I couldn't take back." I cried for hours after reading that, because maybe, just maybe, my pain finally meant something. Maybe it saved someone else from drowning the way I did. Sometimes I visit the beach at night. It's my place of confession, my quiet church. The waves are endless, coming and going just like memories. I sit there with my shoes off, toes buried in the cool sand, and I talk to the sea like it's listening. I loved him, I whisper, and I hated him, and I hated myself for both. The waves answer with their rhythm, as if saying, I know, I know. And I think about how love and hate aren't opposites, they're twins, born from the same place, fed by the same heart. You can't destroy one without wounding the other. It took me a long time to understand that what I did to Ryan wasn't about revenge. It was about desperation, about wanting him to feel trapped because I'd felt trapped for so long. But I've learned something: pain doesn't pass just because you give it away. It multiplies. And when you throw it at someone you love, it always finds its way back to you. It's a circle. I gave him pain, and it came back to me, heavier, sharper, endless. Dr. Patel once told me, revenge is just a way of staying connected to someone who already let you go. And she was right. That's what I'd done, tried to hold on through destruction. But letting go, that's the real revenge. Because it means they no longer have power over you. Last month, I got an invitation in the mail. It was from Ryan's mother, a handwritten letter in delicate cursive. She'd always liked me, even after everything. She wrote, Ryan and I spoke recently. He said you're doing better. I wanted you to know I never stopped praying for you. I still think of you as family. I cried reading that. Because forgiveness, real forgiveness, doesn't come wrapped in apologies. It comes in small, quiet gestures that remind you the world hasn't given up on you yet. I wrote back, thank you for loving me, even when I was unlovable. I still have that bottle, the one that changed everything. It's empty now, cleaned, sealed, tucked in a small box in my closet. I keep it not as a trophy, but as a warning. Every time I feel anger rise in me, every time I want to lash out or hold on to resentment, I take it out and hold it. And I remind myself that love built on control isn't love at all. That bottle taught me what heartbreak can turn you into, and what forgiveness can save you from. Sometimes I imagine telling my story to someone new, maybe over coffee, or during one of those long, late-night talks where secrets come out like sighs. I imagine saying, once upon a time, I loved a man so much I lost myself, and when he broke me, I broke the world around me. And if they asked me why I did it, I'd tell them the truth. Because I thought revenge would fix the part of me he shattered, but it only shattered what was left. They'd probably look at me with pity, but I wouldn't need it. Because I don't live in that story anymore. I just carry it, like an old scar that reminds me where I've been. One night recently, I stood by the ocean again, the moonlight shimmering over the waves. The air smelled like salt and endings. I whispered his name once, just to hear it out loud. It didn't hurt this time, it didn't sting, it just was. I smiled a small, sad smile and said, thank you for breaking me, Ryan, because I wouldn't have learned how to rebuild otherwise. The tide washed up against my feet, soft and forgiving. And for the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. If I've learned anything, it's this. Love can turn people into saints or monsters, sometimes both in the same lifetime. And heartbreak doesn't always end with revenge or forgiveness. Sometimes, it just ends with understanding. Understanding that people hurt people, that apologies don't undo pain, and that life keeps moving even when you can't. I used to think my story was about betrayal. Then I thought it was about revenge. Now I know it's about acceptance. Because real strength isn't in getting even, it's in surviving what you did when you thought you couldn't. When people ask me about regrets, I tell them this. Regret is a form of love that has nowhere left to go. And maybe that's what I feel, not guilt anymore, not rage, just a quiet, lingering kind of love for everything that once was. And when I think of him, of us, I don't cry anymore. I just whisper the same words I said that night on the beach. I forgive you, and I forgive me. Because in the end, that's all that's left. Not the scandal, not the headlines, not the shame. Just two people who loved, hurt, and lost each other. And a woman who finally learned that healing isn't about undoing the past. It's about finding peace with it. Sometimes justice feels like fire, it burns everything, even the hands that light it. But from those ashes, if you're lucky, something gentler can grow.